Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. My name is Marcelo Vitaro, and welcome to the first episode of Muppet Fans Talking. And this is a podcast where I sit down with some of my friends who are aspiring and or professional puppeteers, as well as voice actors, both aspiring and professional. And we sit down and we talk about the Muppets. And today I'm sitting here with my good friend, Mr. Brandon Smith, puppeteer from Virginia. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing good, Marcelo. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Now, for many of my friends who know Brandon, he's one hilarious puppeteer. I've had the pleasure of having to talk with Brandon on a couple of Instagram live stream shows, and along with some original characters that he's done, as well as one character that's my most favorite, named Bubba, a big purple pink monster. Who's very, very hilarious. But we're going to get into that a little later in the show. But right now, Brandon, welcome. And thank you so much for being my first guest on my new podcast, Muppet Fans Talking.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I'm pumped.
All right. So, well, I know now with, everything that's happening right now with quarantine and lockdowns, how have you been holding up?
I've been doing pretty well. I think like a lot of us, we just are longing for the release to get out. But I was working pretty constantly during the pandemic. Not so much before the pandemic. Not so much with puppetry. I have a real job because puppetry can't always pay the bills all the time. So I was working retail for a while until we had to shut down, and that kind of gave me more opportunities to focus more on my puppetry more than I was before. So I've been doing pretty well with it. Staying creative and just trying to stay positive during the whole thing. So it hasn't affected me too much.
That's good. And for many of us who are in the creative fields, you definitely use this time to do a lot of creative stuff, whether it's drawing or writing or puppetry. Definitely use that time to just make something and keep the creative juices flowing,
Exactly.
All right, so like many of my first guests, which I'm starting a trend right now because you're my first guest on the show. Do you remember your first time that you got into puppetry? Like, for many of us, it would be, I was watching Sesame Street or The Muppet Show, Fraggle Rock, and it just went from there. But do you remember your first time?
Ooh, well, there was kind of two moments for me. So the first one, I was really a kid that was glued to the TV 24/7, and I just loved live action shows, things like Sesame Street, and the Muppets were kind of there for me, but not much. But like Bear and Big Blue House, The Book of Pooh, Big Comfy Couch, all those things. But it really started with Barney. That was a show that really got my attention, and it made me mainly want to focus on being a performer. I started out wanting to be a kid actor, but I was a very shy kid, so I couldn't always do that. I did do 2 commercial auditions when I was 4, and that just traumatized me for life. I wouldn't recommend it to shy people. Don't go to auditions, because I didn't think there'd be like strangers and like big giant cameras in my face, like, I didn't think this stuff was on film. I didn't know people were recording this. I thought it was real life. So then kind of transitioned to me learning how to sing, learning how to dance, and kind of just being an all-around performer. But during that time, puppets were kind of around me. I had a few puppets as a kid, and sometimes I do have vivid memories of me watching Kermit Swamp Ears as a kid, and I had this little frog puppet I got from a gas station. And when Kermit would be on screen, I'd pick up my frog puppet and actually do lip sync. And I believe I was about 4 or 5 at the time. So who knew that's where my life would go? But it wasn't until around 2006 or 7 that I picked up puppets again. I found Sesame Old School, which was a DVD box set that was released, and it showed a lot of the old stuff, because I didn't know Sesame Street dated back to the 70s and all that. And I was going through the behind the scenes and seeing people like Jim and Frank, and then going online and researching them, and I was like, these guys are being goofy and funny, but creative, and they're having fun, and it's a job. And I said, this is what I want to do. So at that point, that's when I really started focusing on puppetry, mainly Muppet style, but that's really where it started out for me.
Right. And also for those that are coming across this podcast and don't know who Jim, Frank, and Jerry were, or are.
Shame on those people.
Yeah. Allow me to just give a little history about their creator, Jim Henson. Jim Henson, he was a guy that definitely started the whole Muppet trend, along with many other amazing performers during the 50s, leading up to this very day that we all know them so well. Along with Jim Henson, Frank Oz, Dave Goelz, Jerry Nelson, Carol Spinney, and for those that are still wondering who are you talking about, Kermit the Frog, Cookie Monster, Grover, Count Von Count, Big Bird, Oscar the Grouch. So,
exactly.
I gotta at least, I gotta pinpoint, who the characters are, because if you sit down with someone and you start talking about Jim and Frank and Jerry, Dave and Steve, they're like, wait, who are you talking about? Wait, who? Who? David?
And they're really shocked that those one person does so many of all those characters.
Exactly. So, along with you, coming across the Muppets, do you have a favorite character that you associate with? Because for me, whenever anyone asks me, who's your favorite, it's kind of hard to pick one, because there's so many. But in purpose of this podcast called Muppet Fans Talking,
yes.
it's kind of warranted to ask. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite Muppet that you connect with really well, whether it's Sesame Street or The Muppet Show, Fraggle Rock, whichever?
Okay, there's gonna be a lot of answers here. It's like picking your favorite child. Well, I think all around, my most favorite Muppet character is Big Bird. I loved him as a kid. I relate to him a lot, and I also just my love of Carol and also Matt Vogel as well. They're just wonderful guys, and they really bring that character to life. Muppet wise, that's Sesame. Muppet wise, I would say Kermit, but as a kid, I was in love with Pepe.
Of course, Pepe the King Prawn.
Yes, like I said, one of my favorite takes I had as a kid was Muppet Wizard of Oz, and I think most people have mixed emotions about that TV special. I personally thought it was funny, but Pepe just stole the show for me.
No, of course. I mean, I remember watching it constantly, over and over, when I recorded it on a VHS, and I just kept watching it over and over. I never really understood the hate that people got over it, but I get that it's not for everybody. But when I saw it, I thought it was really well thought out. It was very creative, and going back to discovering Muppets myself, that was the first time that I ever came across Pepe the King Prawn and Johnny Fiamma.
Yes.
And for those again that don't know who, this is a comedy podcast, folks. You're gonna be informed, and we're gonna share some laughs along the way with every guest that I have. For those that don't know who performs Pepe or Johnny, he's done by a man named Bill Beretta, who is, in my eyes, the most hilarious, well-rounded performer I've ever seen in my life. I mean, not only with taking over Rolf the Dog, Swedish Chef, and Dr. Teeth, and Manamana, but also creating his own characters like Pepe, Johnny, and also adding on Bobo the Bear and Big Mean Carl. He's phenomenal. That, and also off Muppet topic here, folks. He, you know, I have to put the brakes on Muppets for a second. As well as his performance of Phil Phillips from Happy Time, which was
yes,
which I get that's not everyone's favorite, but for me, I loved it.
It was a good movie. I took my friend to see it. I can understand why people didn't like it. I mainly saw it for the puppetry.
Yep. Yeah. No, you and me both.
Yeah.
You and me both. I still remember when I showed the trailer to my friends. I was hanging out one time, and I showed them the trailer for Happy Time, and as soon as it gets to the end of the trailer with the heavy graphic scenes, all of my friends just cracked up laughing, and one of my buddies just slammed his hand on the table saying, "That's it. We're gonna go see this movie. When's this coming out? When is this movie coming out? This has puppets. It's R-rated. It's hilarious. I want to see it." And we did. We planned a whole night to see Happy Time, and much like me, they came along for the puppets and for the adult humor, and they were, which, you know, I mean, my philosophy for puppets, especially Muppet style hand puppets, is this: that much like with animation, that can do a whole lot more within movies and TV shows, puppets can do the same thing.
Yeah.
I really do feel that, you know, it can be done. And obviously Happy Time was the first step in doing that of this modern era.
Oh, yeah. And I think one part my friend really enjoyed is the end credits, where they showed how the movie was being made.
Exactly.
With the green screen and everything. And I remember her watching it, and then she turned to me and said, "Oh my God, that's what you do?" I said, "Yes."
The same thing. As soon as the movie was done and we're watching the end credits, and after they show that part with the puppeteers and the green screen, afterwards we walk out to the lobby, and my friends constantly kept asking me technical puppet questions like, okay, so how does that work? So, like, you know, this puppet is standing next to Melissa McCarthy. Like, where are you? Like, where are you within the scene? And, you know, like how does it all work? And so I kind of had to give them the long, boring technical aspect of it. But but the more I explained it, the more they were like, wow, that's actually pretty interesting. And yet I'm pretty sure the small parts of their heads were going, you pretty much just gave the magic away.
Well, I personally think it enhances the magic.
Lest we forget when Jim Henson did that interview showing how the technical aspects work for the gourds in Fraggle Rock. That was kind
of rough.
The reporter just went, I think you're kind of giving the magic away.
You get to see all the guts.
Yeah. It's amazing though. It's amazing to know how much thought went into every single one of shows and movies that Jim Henson and everybody else put into it.
Oh yeah.
And so, all right. So we mentioned about, you know, your favorite Muppet, and then we sort of went on a major tangent there.
That's the fun part of these things. You just go off.
Exactly. And then somehow we'll always manage to get right back to where we were. You know.
All right.
That's the fun part. You know, half of this stuff is highly organized, you know, with questions, you know, ready to be answered. But at the same time, you know, we just kind of, you know, we're riffing at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's not a serious podcast where it's like, okay, we're gonna sit down and ask you all these questions, and, you know, we're gonna try to make it as serious and on point as possible. And with this one, it's more, you know, we are gonna answer the questions, and we are gonna be straightforward, you know, with how things are done, but, you know, we're going to try to make it fun and lively, and we're just going to go on tangents and talk about, you know, other things with the Muppets and then come right back.
All right.
So along with that, you mentioned about your favorite Muppets from Sesame Street mainly because of Carol Spinney and Matt Vogel. Now I know you met Matt Vogel through one of these workshops that you attended, and we're gonna talk about that in just a few minutes. But
okay.
But did you ever have the chance to meet Carol Spinney?
I did not, but Carol was the first kind of Muppet performer connection I ever made. It was around 2012 or so, I believe. It was whenever the trailer for I Am Big Bird came out, because it took them a while to make that movie. So yeah, I think it was around that time. So I was remembering looking at that, and I was still in the beginnings of my puppetry, and I said, Carol Spinney really meant a lot to me, and I'm losing my words.
That's okay.
I thank him for just being a true inspiration to me. So I remember I'm watching an episode of Sesame Street, and I just had the random idea to sit down and write him a letter. And at that point, I mean, it was 2012. I don't know if people were still writing letters, but I said I'm just gonna write him a letter. So I just kind of poured my heart into this letter, and I remember just writing it. I gave it to my mom, said, hey, can you mail this for me? And she said, okay. Didn't really care what it was. And then that was around July, and I didn't get the letter back till the day after Thanksgiving.
Oh.
And at that point, I kind of forgot about it. I was like, maybe he'll get it, maybe he won't. I don't know how the mail works. But I go to the mailbox, I see there's a letter for me, and I was like, me? I never get an email. And I read at the top, it says Spinney. Now, for some reason, that didn't connect to my brain, so I'm just saying, who the heck is Spinney? And it wasn't until well, let me open it. And the second I open it, all I see is like a yellow feather. And I say, oh! And I'm just tearing the letter open, I'm trying to be careful though, but I'm really excited. And it's a signed picture and a note from Carol. He signed a picture of Big Bird and Oscar, and he wrote me back saying, thank you for the nice words, and hopefully you make it to Sesame one day. And I said, oh man. And so I have that kind of framed in my display shelf as we speak.
That's so beautiful, man. Especially, for those that definitely got the chance to meet Carol, either on the set of Sesame Street, you always see someone carrying out a yellow feather. And
exactly.
and with that, especially when he was performing at that time, many of our puppeteer friends who have visited the set of Sesame Street when Carol was still performing, you always see them leaving with a yellow feather, and they always cherish it because of not only the fun memories that they've had growing up with Big Bird, but knowing that you had that chance, you had that moment to meet Carol Spinney.
Yeah, and I think the real magical part about that, sadly after Carol passed away last December, even people that didn't meet him, you realized all over the world in social media, everybody had a Carol Spinney story to tell.
Yep, they did.
Even if you met him on set, if you wrote him a letter, or if you just watched him on TV and didn't know who the guy was till you heard he was dead on the news, just like everyone had that Big Bird or Oscar story to share, and it was all just so emotional. And I'm glad the last few years of his life he got to do those Comic-Cons and really meet the people face to face, and they were able to tell him that.
Seeing those pictures of Carol Spinney at Comic-Con, that really got me, because he gets the chance to meet practically everybody that grew up watching him perform Big Bird or Oscar the Grouch. The one picture that I saw on his, I think it was on his Facebook page or Instagram page, I can't remember, but it was Carol Spinney with his wife Debbie with Tara Strong. And that one, seeing that picture, that just blew my mind, because Tara Strong, she's a phenomenal, well-known voice actress. meeting meeting one of the original Muppet performers from Sesame Street. I just thought it was a really beautiful moment in that picture.
I think while we're on that subject, I think one of my favorite pictures, and I wish I could have been at that Comic Con. I've never been to a Comic Con yet, but it was a picture of Carol sitting next to Bob West, who, for those of you who don't know, was the original voice of Barney.
Yep.
So, two childhood heroes that are the reason I'm here right now talking to you. Just blew my mind, and then that they worked together a couple times. That's because Barney kind of did kill Sesame Street for a while. He was a little more popular than they were.
Yep. Yeah. I remember seeing that. I mean, I may have been a young kid watching Sesame Street, but in the back of my head, I was just going, "Hey, how come there's not as much Sesame Street on here?" I mean, I love Barney, but where's Big Bird and Elmo and at that point, I was like, wait, maybe they might do a crossover at one point.
Well, they have on a few occasions.
Yeah, it was on those commercials, but I was hoping for like maybe a full episode.
Oh, well, that's a lot of copyrights.
I know, but if they were able to do a commercial, I'm pretty sure they might put that aside and go, oh, let's all meet up,
Yeah.
Same thing when Big Bird went to visit Bear from Bear in the Big Blue House.
See, that could have been done, maybe.
It could have been done. It could have been done because it would. I mean, yes, worlds would have been collided, but it would have been a beautiful thing. But going back, we mentioned about Carol, and all right, now we're gonna get to the topic of Matt Vogel.
Yes.
And you've managed to go to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you managed to go to, I believe, 2 workshops for Sesame?
I've done 3.
Okay. I was somewhere around 3 or 2. I wasn't sure. So,
yeah.
So you've managed to attend some workshops for Sesame that were taught by Matt Vogel, Peter Linz, and Martin P. Robinson. Again, for those that don't know who they are, I'm gonna keep doing that every podcast, right. Every episode.
What they need to know.
Yeah. Every episode I do, I'm gonna have to explain who these fine people are. For those that don't know, Matt Vogel, Big Bird, Kermit the Frog, Count Von Count, Peter Linz, Ernie, Harry Monster, Walter, Martin Robinson, Snuffleupagus, Slimy the Worm, Telly Monster. Okay? We're good? We're good? Okay. So... I'm such a big dork when I do this stuff. And I don't care. I embrace it.
It's not stuff we all don't know. They need to know it too.
Exactly. It's just called Muppet Fans Talking for a reason.
Exactly.
So yeah, you've managed to attend 3 workshops with these three amazing performers who've worked on Sesame Street, as well with the Muppets. So
yes.
So what was that experience like when you went there the first time, and then you went back to attend these workshops again 2 more times? And also, for me, I definitely know how many of my friends managed to get into those workshops. But for those that don't know, you think you might be able to explain, how it was that you were able to attend those workshops at that time?
Sure. So I'll try not to talk forever, but so actually, before I met Matt at that workshop in my first one, and my first one was in 2017 of April. I met him before in November of 2016. So if anyone remembers, the Muppets did the opening for the Macy's parade that year. They did like the spoof on a movie, and
yeah, exactly. They actually did an amazing job with recreating that musical number from the opening of the Great Muppet Caper.
my mother, who works for Capital One, and I think most people know Capital One is the big bank that's always selling you a credit card. She kind of works for the guy who runs everything, so to speak. So kind of the head of the business. And it was when the Muppets did their ABC series, and they were out doing commercials for Subway and things like that. So they did a commercial for Capital One. Now at that point, my mom's boss, he'd known of me, and I brought my pup to the office a few times. So when he heard the company was doing a commercial with them, he said, "Hey, my assistant has a son who's a puppeteer. He's amazing. He's got to come down and meet these guys." And of course, it was a quick commercial, and Muppets were very busy, so they didn't have time to do that. So I did get a personal signed autograph picture from Steve, who was still doing Kermit at the time. Steve Whitmire, for those who don't know.
Yeah, I know. I was actually about to say, because we know who Steve is, but for everyone else, it's like, wait, they're talking about this Steve guy. Who is it? Steve Whitmire, who used to be Kermit. Oh, okay. So
exactly. And then I got another one from Eric Jacobson, Miss Piggy, Grover, Bert. Basically, he's the number 2 Frank Oz. So that happened. But the Muppets, they remembered my name, and they really did want to meet me, but they didn't quite know how. So they tried sending me to the Henson company, but to meet Brian Henson, but they weren't doing tours at the time. They tried to get me to Sesame Street, but they weren't filming. So they said, "What else do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I'd like to go to the parade. I know Sesame does the parade, so maybe I can meet them." So they're like, "Oh, we don't know if you can meet them. We're not sure, but we'll definitely set up you to go to the parade." So I said, "Okay, this is fun." And then it was one night that the Muppets posted last minute that they were going to do that opening. So that's when I showed that to my mother. She sent it to the team that was putting together our trip to New York. And they said, "Okay, the day you get to New York, you're going to go straight to this rehearsal hall and meet the Muppets." I said, "Oh, man." So we're driving to New York. We leave really late. It took about 4 hours from where I am to get to the city. And we go to this building, and we go up these crickety stairs, and we hear like this big, like giant elevator that's just like, and we open these big doors, and here I see all these monitors and these big cameras, and then I pan over here, and then there's Kermit, there's Piggy, and there's Fozzie, there's all the characters, but then I look down lower, and there's my heroes. There's Matt, and there's Bill, and there's all those guys. And Sweetums walks by me when I enter the door, and he gives me a high five. And I said, "Oh, I feel like I made it." And that just took my breath away. Once they were done rehearsing, they said, "Hey, there's a visitor here. Just put on Kermit and take pictures." So Matt put on Kermit, and he got on the floor. Now, this was before it was announced that Steve wasn't there, so I knew I couldn't talk to Kermit because I didn't think Matt would do the voice. So I talked to Matt, and he says, "Hi," and he's like, "Oh, you know my name?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, you must be a puppeteer." I said, "Yes." So after that, he stands up and talks to me. I start, and to those of you Muppet fans out there, believe me, I was geeking out that I'm talking to Matt Vogel, and then everyone's coming around me. Like, there's Dave Goles, there's David Rudman, there's Eric, there's Peter, all my heroes, and I have them all to myself. And I was even thinking about saying, like, "Hey, I want to work for you guys." I was just in awe. So it wasn't until I left that a few days later, Matt Vogel emails me saying, I brought a puppet with me. And he said, "I was watching your lip sync, and it was really good. And your voices are really good. Definitely have those keen skills of puppetry, but you definitely need to work on monitor work." And I said yes, because I'd never done monitor work before. A lot of my stuff is live. So he was emailing me tips. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to study these." And it wasn't until, I believe, around mid-March, he said, "Hey, would you like to come do a workshop for Sesame next month?" And I said, "Oh my God, yes," because I was always trying to get into these workshops, but at the time, now they started kind of doing them consistently. But before that, they weren't advertised as much. I didn't know where to find out about them, and I also wasn't of age to go yet. You had to be 18.
Right.
So at this point, I was like, "Yes, I'm ready. Let's go." So I go up there the first time. I see Matt and Peter again, and I meet Marty, who was wonderful, and a bunch of other wonderful young puppeteers like Chris Hayes, Tal Bennett, Stacey Gordon, Laura Bacon, Bakari, all those wonderful people. And it was just a great learning experience. And that's one thing I will always take from that, workshop you go to, it's a learning experience. You always go, and I think, I forgot if you said this once, but puppeteers never stop learning. In a sense where everything they teach you, and it's like, once you see it on the monitor, if they describe it, you're like, oh. And when they really describe it to you, when you see somebody actually do it, it kind of just hits you like a lightning bolt. Like, oh, that's what they meant. Ooh, I noticed that now.
Right. Because, for me, when I started out, I mean, I knew how to do the lip sync. I knew how to change my voice at the time. Not as high range as it is now. But when I attended a workshop that Martin Robinson was doing around Lincoln around Lincoln Center. He met up with everyone else who did attend the workshop, and one of my friends, he just brought me over to introduce me to Martin. And Martin just goes, oh yeah, Marcelo. Yeah, I remember, we got your email with your video. And look, the lip sync was really good, but there's like a couple other things that you definitely need to brush up on. And around then, when he started the workshop, he brought Telly. He brought Telly Monster with him, as well as, along with some of the other AM Muppets, for that workshop at that time. And Martin, Martin was demonstrating about live hand puppets or practical hand puppets, whichever one, works. And so Telly, he's demonstrating, live hand performances, but it was only with Martin. And for that to work, as we know, there has to be a second performer to operate the other hand.
Yes.
And so Martin and Telly, they were just looking around the room, and they saw me with my Cookie Monster shirt, and Telly just goes, "Hey, you with that Cookie Monster shirt? Yeah, come on up here, come on." And I was like, "Wait, what is happening right now?" He was like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna help me out. Come on." So you know how live hand works, right? Like, yeah. He's like,
I believe so, but for the folks at home.
Okay, a little bit of a history lesson here. If anyone here ever went to see Avenue Q at the time that it was performing on Broadway, they pretty much show you exactly how this stuff works. So with Nicky and Trekkie Monster on Avenue Q, they're both practical hand puppets. And so one hand operates the head, and the other hand pretty much operates the left hand. And there's always a second performer to operate the other hand to give it more live movement. And that was basically what I went up there to demonstrate with Martin P. Robinson.
Exactly. And if I can jump in for a second.
Sure.
Live, right-handing is, you think it's easy if you look at it, but if you actually do it, it's the hardest thing you ever have to do.
It really is. I mean, I've attended a lot of workshops from the Puppet Kitchen, and
yes.
Yeah, and I remember there was this one event that I went to. It was with Joey Mazzarino, and it was my first time meeting Joey. And along with Joey and another puppeteer, they were just improvising. And Joey, he had a practical hand puppet. It was a sack. It was a sack practical hand puppet. And, I was kind of, I was still new to this, still learning and observing. But, I kind of, what I saw Joey and this other performer doing, just improvising back and forth, I thought that was a lot of fun. And so I thought, you know what, let me try doing some right-handing for this character. And right before we got started, I go up to Joey. I went, "Joey, you mind if I help out here?" He's like, "Oh yeah, sure, go ahead." Folks, the stuff that Joey Mazzarino was saying with this puppet, I could not hold in my laughter. I could not hold in my laughter because whatever Joey's doing with the left hand, I'm trying to make it look, very natural and very organic. with my side of the performing. But the stuff that Joey was saying was just too funny. I'm holding in my laugh so much. So everybody can't see me, but I'm so down below trying to, performing the right hand for Joey, and he's just spitting out a whole lot of hilarious stuff left, right, and center. I'm just going just holding in my laughter. And at the very end, we stop, and Joey, and so I put down my puppet, and I just burst. I burst with laughter at that point in time. It was hilarious.
Oh man, also I just turned my camera on, so I didn't know if this was visual, if this was just audio.
Actually, for the folks at home, it was almost gonna be visual. But since I couldn't figure out how to save the video on here, this is actually just going to be a regular audio podcast.
Okay, cute. I was looking off camera. I was moving around.
Actually, you know what? With doing this as video when we're talking and I'm recording half of this stuff, it'll actually give some people to think about. Like, wait, what? How are they doing this visually? Like they're constantly laughing and smiling, and the demonstrations and all. Like, wait, you're doing this over here with what? And
you're having an audio podcast about a visual medium.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Under the Puppet can do it, why can't I? And this is
below the frame is audio.
Exactly, and all of this is just for fun. And, also informative, but also just getting a chance to sit down with some friends and just talk about, not just puppets, but what we love about the Muppets overall. So, with going back with that workshop, so you went there and you had the chance to meet and also getting a chance to work with Martin, Matt, and Peter at that time.
And sometimes other people would step in. Stephanie DeBruzzo stepped in. I'll say it, Prairie Dawn.
Yes, of course.
She was Kate Monster on Avenue Q. And then, of course, Jen Barnhart stepped in for some. She does Zoe, and she does a whole bunch. She did a Snuffleupagus once. They step in on occasions as well. And sometimes Leslie Carrera Rudolph will join in, Abby Cadabby or Ryan Dillon watched one of our workshops once. He knows Elmo.
We're just informing everybody about, more of these amazing people that we look up to.
So for episode 2, we don't have to say their names or their characters. You're going to say their names, you already know who it is.
This is the first episode, people, so be sure to take notes. You're going to get quizzed on this later.
It was wonderful to work with my heroes, just for them to teach me things. And the one thing they'll tell you when you go to a workshop, people, is it's not an audition. It's not, but it kind of is. It's really to see who's out there. To train them and to see something in those people. So for future workshop, you can bring them back. Or if there's anytime Sesame will do a side project or new characters, they can say, hey, remember this person? They might be good. Let's give them a call. So you never know what's going to happen when you do these things. But even if you never get a call back, anything like that, it's take away as much as you can from that experience to, keep doing your own work or find other puppet companies or people out there, and they'll be grateful you have that experience.
Exactly. Like, back then when I submitted my stuff twice, of course I didn't get in the second time. I just kept learning. I just kept watching and just seeing, how on point these performers do what they do. And also it's a fun takeaway to just see, okay, Martin performs this way, but Matt also performs this way. Let me see if I could try doing that. But never copy, their style. Always try to
Yeah.
always try to take something from that, and then make it as your own.
Exactly.
So and those two workshops, the first two that you did, you mentioned a while back that the third time around it was for camera work, wasn't it?
Well, they're each kind of for camera work. But the third one, now that wasn't an audition, or that wasn't an audition workshop where you submitted tape. They kind of called me back for that. So prior to that, I'd gotten my first two auditions for them. It was around December. I got a call to do a character recast. So they were bringing a legacy character back, and then I got a call to audition for Helpsters. So when those two kind of fell through, they picked other people for those things, obviously. But once they sent me that, they said, "Hey, we chose two other people for these roles," and I said, "Okay, that's fine. But would you mind coming back in March? We're going to do a 2-day workshop, and instead of what usually happens is it's like 20 of us out of like 300 or 400 submissions that Marty and Matt have to go through.
Exactly.
So for this one, it was 10 of us, and it was really a lot of them were the mentees that are on Sesame now. So it was me, Paul McGinnis was there, Haley Jenkins, Laura McLean, who I love, Tao, Chris Hayes, Stacy, Spencer Lott, a lot of the people that are working on the show now. And it was a 3-camera training workshop. So for people who don't know, Sesame is a 3-camera show. So there's constantly cuts to like a wide shot, a close-up shot, anything like that. So getting puppeteers used to that, because we all work on a monitor, and the monitor helps us see. But when you reposition the camera, now when puppets look at each other, they're not really looking at each other. So
Exactly.
when you reposition the camera to another shot, the puppet may look a little off, or the eye line's messed up. So you've got to kind of rehearse that movement, so that way when it goes to that quick cut, you can remember where you were in that exact spot to make it look as clean as possible.
Right. Because, and with some of the other workshops I've done, we didn't really do like 3 cameras. We mainly just did 1 camera, and then when one of the characters walks in, and another character walks in, we just do like a slight, that slight turn to the right or the left.
Angle where you can still see both of the eyes.
Exactly. We didn't really have that, but in the back of my head, when we were doing it as an exercise, I was just going, yeah, there's, I kind of feel like, if this place had like 3 cameras, we'd still be looking at the monitor, but then they'd cut to a different camera. We'd have to position ourselves in this angle, and then if they cut to a different camera, they'd have to cut to that angle. As for a guy that has little experience in television and film, I pretty much have like some small knowledge on how that stuff works.
Yeah, it was very difficult, and it kind of makes you pull your hair out a little bit.
Yeah.
But you and that was only, most workshops are like 3 days long, but that one was only 2. And usually the last day you do a sketch with a partner or something like that. So it really, for me, I mean, everyone else, I think they may have had a little more opportunities with that because they were doing Sesame stuff, but I wasn't. So I only had 1 day to really kind of learn this as well as I could, so that the next day I could be ready to do a scene. And by day 2, I kind of did settle in a little more, but I'm still kind of trying to find ways to practice that. I don't have a lot of high quality cameras, so I'm still doing just basic 1-camera monitor work right now.
No, yeah, and plus, whatever works for people that are still learning how this stuff works, everything will happen with time.
Exactly, and I think the Muppet guys really know what you're capable of. So I think they kind of saw something in me that said, I think he can learn how to do this. And I said, are you sure? I can go back home now. No. We want you here. We see something in you. You can definitely do this. Yeah. So those were fun. And one thing I will take away from that as well is all the amazing friends I got to make over the years. and people I'm still in contact with today.
Exactly.
And you get to work on stuff with them because they're all puppeteers doing their own thing. So it's fun being part of other people's projects.
Exactly. That's the one thing that I absolutely adore with this field in puppets is that, you know, you meet so many other talented people along the way, and you become good friends with them after knowing them for a long period of time. And then when we all get to do like a major meetup, it's like, oh, I've had an idea for this video, or I've had an idea for this video, and it's like, oh, well, why don't we try doing that together?
Exactly, and you build that relationship that those Muppet guys have. You kind of become your own Muppet guys.
Exactly. You become your own Muppet guys, but you do something that's totally new, totally original. But the main thing, which I always strive with, have fun on top of the performance. That's my main thing. If I'm not having fun on top of the performance, I just stop and go, what am I doing? I'm doing something wrong here.
Exactly.
So along with those awesome workshops that you've done, there's definitely a new age of young artists out there, whether it's voice acting or writing or cartoonists or puppeteers. There's a lot of them starting out, and of course, we're still starting out, but we sort of have like a small little, I'm trying to find the word, some small recognition, I'd say. Yeah, like some small recognition with what we do, whether it's, posting pictures online or making a video and people see it and it's like, oh wow, this looks really fun, I want to try to do this. And most people back in the past have asked me for advice on how I got started doing this, and I've tried my best to give the best advice I could. But for you, Brandon, for anyone that's ever asked, oh, how do I do this? Because this looks really fun. It's something that's very freeing, and you can do practically whatever you want with puppets, because there's no limit to the imagination as well. What kind of advice that you can give to anyone that's that's starting out to be a puppeteer or wanting to be one?
Well, there's many things. I would say the one thing that we all always hear is that puppeteers are actors. We're all actors, just from the wrist up. So it's something that I didn't do. I would suggest taking acting classes or finding a group of people to work off of. Acting and improvising is one of the top things. If you're going for the Muppets and Sesame, yes, but just in general, knowing how to do that with a puppet is good. And of course, if you're going into television puppetry, find a way to hook up a camera to a TV so you can get a monitor, but make sure it's reversed because that's the puppet's world is on the monitor. So you have to really learn how to do that in order to succeed in that. But also, if not that, other ways. There's so many other realms of puppetry that get forgotten because of things like Henson and Muppets. Like ventriloquism is really coming back, and things like marionettes and shadow puppets. Try to learn as many different puppet techniques as you can, because those companies may also be looking for people. Because Henson and Sesame, they're popular, but it's very specific, and not everybody can really get into it because they kind of have all the people they need right now. So you never know when that opportunity will open up. So it's best to find those other outlets of it. And just like acting, try to get into acting. So maybe you can be a as we say, a meat actor instead of a puppet actor. So find those different outlets.
Exactly. Like for me, when I started, I never set out to be a puppeteer or a voice actor. I just had this talent that people on occasion said, oh, you could do great voices. Why don't you try going into this? It's like, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to. But
Yeah.
but if it's something in the back of your head that's going, wait a minute, maybe I can do this. It's always good to just take the chance and just, acting classes, of course, and acting classes, improv classes, just find a core group of people that you can just work off of.
Exactly.
And for me, and I'm sure for everyone else, my favorite thing to do with puppets is improvise. Because we work off each other and we're bouncing off each other with various puppet characters that we have. Sooner or later, you can definitely develop a full fleshed out character at that point.
Yeah, and that's one thing Sesame always talks about is bold characters, making bold character choices. Just not thinking, flying off the cuff. And I'm normally able to do that. Depends. If I'm with one of those guys, I kind of get a little more nervous around them. So it's kind of hard for me to fully improvise as myself. But definitely working around that and finding those people. And I'm assuming that's why my Instagram Live goes so well, because that's fully improvised. I don't plan those out. I just put on a puppet and I say, whoever's coming on, I'm just going to say whatever I want, and hopefully you can bounce off of it.
Exactly. And that's actually another fun way to improvise, especially if you're doing an Instagram Live show, because many of our puppet friends can jump on with whatever character we have, and we just start bouncing back and forth. Just the whole thing that I say with improvisation, we're just playing around.
Yeah,
that's it, and that's all it is. You don't have to think so much about it. Just don't think. Just draw a blank and just have fun with it.
Exactly, and that goes to something that I remember Marty Robinson told me during my first workshop. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this because I don't know if you can censor a podcast.
You know what? With this one being my first episode, I always say this: my material is for everybody, whether it be for a family audience or for an older audience. I'll definitely try to censor it if I can, but if I can't, then it's gonna be out there. But
I'll just say I don't have to say that.
Go ahead.
Don't be afraid to fuck up. That's what you're here for. You're here because we want to train you. Not if we thought you were the most perfect puppeteer out there, we wouldn't bring you in here.
That and Martin Robinson said that.
Yep, he did.
I think that kind of sums it up.
Which kind of took us back because it was like, did Kelly just drop the F-bomb?
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, we didn't know we could swear here. We thought this was Sesame Street.
What do you think they do before the cameras go on? They have.
You notice that when you do those workshops, when those puppeteers, before they actually start teaching us those characters things and doing some things that I can't say, they're definitely cracking us up because they're adult men that do a kid show, so they like to blow off some steam every now and again.
Also, when you see that, it's almost like seeing how Jim Henson first started doing this, because we've all heard the stories of how Jim started out, doing late night television, and then when he started working on Sesame Street or the Muppets, Brian Henson, he pretty much said it well, that the funniest stuff is before the director calls action and after the director calls cut. Those were the funniest because everybody, they would all stay in character. They would all stay in character, and they would all start getting really blue with each other. Now, if I had been there, I pretty much would have been falling off the chair, laughing. Like, wow, did Telly just...
We all were.
I can imagine that. Like, wait, did the count just actually say that? Oh my God, Harry, what were you saying? Telly, no, that triangle doesn't go there.
And be careful what you catch on film, because they'll say, don't post that.
Exactly.
And we know not to. It's just, and that's fun little secret stuff we can save to our archives.
Exactly. I mean, if you guys recorded it, save it just to look back and get a good laugh.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not our fault. We didn't know they were going to take it that way.
Someone catches this on Facebook, which I did a few years ago, and I saw Harry. He was like, "Oh wait, your skin tone." I don't know. I mean, I don't know what happened like in the beginning of that, but I remember Harry.
I know who posted that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I was at that one.
I remember Harry. He was just looking at the count, and he was just going, "Oh wait, your skin tone. Does that make me a racist?" I'm like, wait, what is happening?
Yeah.
Wait, what is happening here? And the funny thing is, even though I'm seeing the characters, for most people that that work with the Muppets, they just focus on the puppets. For me, whenever I see like behind the scenes stuff or people just like playing around, I just look at the puppets, but I also see how I just see how Matt and Peter and Martin are just trying to keep a straight face.
Yeah.
And that makes it even better.
Yeah. I think one of the funniest or best moments I've had is when I'm able to make them laugh.
Exactly. The one time, going back to that workshop that I attended, it was around when I was in college. It was when it was the one with I mentioned earlier with Martin Robinson, and again I knew how to perform lip sync. I knew how to work with arm rods and practical hands, and I knew how to change my voice a little bit. But then when it came time for me to go up in front of a monitor, I completely blow it. I blow it. I'm leaning all over the place, and I'm just nervous from the neck down. I'm just going, come on, try to get this right. I mean, Martin Robinson, he's standing right there. Try to, just try. And I'm trying, and I'm trying, and I'm trying. And I just completely mess it up. And, Martin, he just, and, I go back around, just wait with everybody else. And Martin was like, all right, that wasn't good, but, it was a good first attempt. And he said it in a nice way. And which I really admired. And at the end of the night, Martin, he pulls me aside and he says, "Well, listen, you know how to do lips. You know how to do proper lip sync with, good straight syllables. You know how to perform with arm rods, and you know how to perform with practical hands. That's good. You just got to work on monitor work, and you got to work on creating characters on the spot. So just don't think about it too much. Just whatever puppet you have, just try to think, okay, what kind of character can you create at that point?"
Exactly.
But I did make him laugh when when the random anything Muppet I had was leaning back and forth, and I tried to keep it to myself as a hush hush, but I just went, "Man, this does feel like a weekend at Bernie's." And I look over and Martin was cracking up. I'm like, okay.
That's the best.
I just went, okay, I screwed up in front of Martin P. Robinson, but at least I managed to make a funny. And so that works for me.
That's awesome.
Now, all right, so just to wrap everything up, we could pretty much sit here and talk for hours about favorite Muppet moments, which is the last thing that I have on here. But for time's sake, do you have like one very special Muppet moment that you have?
From watching them, do you mean?
You know what, for this, for the sake of this, yeah, like from whatever you were watching, whether it was a movie or a TV show, what was your favorite moment from the Muppets that really got you from the heart?
Ooh.
Which I know it's kind of hard to answer because, going back, there's just so many.
Well, to take it back to the beginning, talking about Big Bird, I think everyone talks about this Sesame Street with the Goodbye, Mr. Hooper episode. That really hit me in a way. And I didn't know who Mr. Hooper was until I got those DVDs. And, hearing them talk about it, a kid show never really touched on death, and even if it did, it was like, death of like a pet, not really of a person in your life.
Right.
And it was just so well done, and it's such a good way of explaining. I think even explaining death to kids like that today, it would still do the same justice as it did in the 80s.
I agree, and that's one of the things that I still love about Sesame Street is that, yes, it's a kid show where, they're there to teach your kids, about the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s, but they're not afraid to touch on topics that are real. And I respect Sesame Street for that. Because, they mentioned about death back then. Today, they're talking about, about homelessness, children with autism. Mm-hmm. And every time I see this, I just think, how much thought and dedication that everybody's putting into this, and just sharing, how real it is. Because that's one of the things that I think people are afraid to see in certain TV shows and movies is that, of course we watch them to get away from reality, but oftentimes, bringing up that topic kind of makes it all the more realistic and all the more reasons to go, wow, this is something that I can connect with.
Exactly. And I think that's what Sesame Street really does. Teaches letters, numbers, arithmetic, all that, but also teaches kids about the real world before they get there.
Exactly. And once you hit 10 years old and you discover a Broadway show called Avenue Q, then they explain the real world a little more.
Then it's like, oh, this is what you really meant by this.
I learned about that harsh reality at such a young age, and yet I manage well. So yeah, with that, before we let you go, where can people find you, Brandon? On any platform of social media known to man.
Well, I am on Instagram. You can follow me at bsmith_puppets. That's where I do a lot of my live streams and things like that. Same thing I just started doing TikToks. So you can also see me on there with a bunch of other talented people. As well, I'm also starting a podcast with a couple buddies of mine, Brad Freeman, Sebastiano Ricci, and Mark Terrett, a bunch of amazing puppeteers who've done workshops with me as well, and worked on Sesame as well right now. So we're doing a podcast called Young Puppeteers Roundtable. So we'll be talking to young puppeteers, kind of like what you're doing, people that aren't really in the industry yet, but making a name for themselves, and also dissecting and talking about puppet shows like Sesame, Muppets, and things like that, but really diving deep into them, like really dissecting them. And we'll have special guests on that maybe worked on the show or maybe just want to talk about the show. So you can go to youngpuppeteersroundtable.com. You can follow us on Instagram with the same name. And we'll be doing a lot of that stuff.
Wow, so there are a lot of podcasts coming up for explaining about puppets, but also dissecting heavy into every show. It's almost like a huge philosophy lesson right there.
Yeah, so you hear that? Grandpa Choco, Matt Vogel, Ashton Kutcher, we're coming for you with these podcasts now.
And as for me, this podcast is mainly to, again, to just sit down with some friends. We talk about the Muppets, what they mean to us. And also, for me, I'm getting myself out there as a cartoonist, voice actor, and puppeteer. There's a lot of people that I know from, in person or meeting on social media who are phenomenal, hilarious, amazingly talented young puppeteers. And this show right here is to help shine some light on them as well.
And I think we need that right now more than ever.
Oh, absolutely. especially with, with this being the first episode. A little bit of technical issues, folks, with trying to figure out how to properly do this, but further down the line, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't mind being the guinea pig for this.
Well, you are the first guinea pig, my friend. There are a couple other ones in the works.
All right. Well, I can't do accents, but okay. I'll just do my Pepe, okay?
Hey, don't be fooling around, okay?
Why you got to say so many crazy things?
Hey, we say the crazy things because we are crazy. That's what we do. That's our art form, okay?
Okay.
Brandon, again, same thing. When I jump on your Instagram live streams, we could talk for hours, or maybe write a book about how much.
Oh God, do people really want to read about this?
Like, how long does this take?
It's like I'd rather read The Wisdom of Big Bird. At least there's some good stuff in there.
But again, man, I could talk to you for hours about this art form that we've both grown to be a part of, and also just meet a lot of these wonderful people. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of my first podcast of Muppet Fans Talking. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, Mr. Brandon Smith, thank you so much for joining me, man.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Brandon, and thank you everybody for listening. I'll see you on the next one.